this evening. And Sammy, maybe you could just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go into your presentation.
Okay, so I'm Sammy, I'm married to Sean, and I'm a mum of two. They are slightly older now. One of my children, Ben, is autistic. So I am used to the whole kind of neurodiverse community. And just in case it helps you to know, when we got Ben diagnosed, I realised I'm autistic too, and I just never realised it. I live on a new estate. We moved here very intentionally, and we do outreach here, and you'll hear a little bit about that. The other part of my life, you can see on the screen, it says Hope Together. So I work for a national charity called Hope Together. They are about the local church and the local Christian, because we want to reach everyone everywhere with the good news about Jesus. And my particular remit is kind of streets and homes. And yeah, I have the bonkers objective, set for me, not by me, of praying for every street, road and lane in the UK and reaching every home by the end of 2038, just a little thing. So it's a good job. I like working with people. When I'm not doing that, I write kids' books and various other bonkers things. Chocolate, box sets, gardening, running. There you go. You've got a bit of a picture.
Thank you, Sammy. We're really delighted to have you with us tonight, and you're going to share a bit about your experience of Halloween for us. So off you go.
Brilliant. Let's find my pictures, and then you're not just looking at me, but you've got something else to look at along the way. Okay, I've only really got pictures of what I do now, but I want to take you on a bit of a journey. My first memory of Halloween is from when I was in year 2 at school. And we had a Halloween party. Mr. Berry, my teacher, ran it, and it was great. But my parents became Christians by the time I was in year 3. And I don't really have any other memories of Halloween. It was something that we avoided. So when I got married, that's kind of what I thought you had to do, just avoid it. So my line, if people came to the door, was to say, come back in a month, and if you sing me a carol, I'll give you double. Okay, I just avoided it until I couldn't. And I couldn't avoid it when I became a children's worker in a church. And so what I did then was what my mum and dad did when they ran the children's work at their church when I was at university, and I ran light parties. Right, first thing to say, nothing wrong with light parties. This is my journey of Halloween through various iterations. I'm doing what I do now because of my particular calling in this context. And what I do with Halloween relates to how God has called me to mission and the particular approach to mission I feel called to. You are going to hear various examples of what you can do to respond to Halloween this evening. It's not an either or, a right or wrong. Choose what suits you, your calling and your context. So light parties, great. And that's where I started. I remember running a Saints and Superheroes disco. I remember doing something on Moses and the burning bush. I remember showing Prince of Egypt and having a dressing up competition. But I was also effectively chaplain at the church school and social media as well. A combination of the two, I realised that I wasn't so much providing an alternative to Halloween as just something extra to do. There was one particular year, the year we'd done Moses and the burning bush as a kind of messy autumn, that some of the families that I'd spent the Saturday afternoon with were then on my social media feed dressed up as goodness knows what with their trick-or-treating buckets. And I thought, what am I about here? Am I trying to provide an alternative or just another form of entertainment? So I then adapted things and I tried treating. So instead of going out trick-or-treating, we would go to every street locally around the church and we would drop off treats with little handwritten blessings on them. And my children would do that where we lived as well. Our street was mainly made up of like 70-year-olds. So we didn't get a lot of children. And my children were not really very sure about the idea of going and giving sweets to other people. Until a few days later, the sweets and the crisps were posted through our letterbox from our various neighbours as well, who were touched at this idea of, doing something a bit different for Halloween. Eventually, there was one year where I went into the school that I was linked with on the Tuesday lunchtime. Monday had been Halloween, and the head was like, "Oh, Sammy, you've got to help. We've had so many complaints because they'd literally ran amok through a very nice estate, don't you know, and kind of a few gardens might have been semi-trashed by kind of lots of children running through the mud." And so I thought, right, in future, I'm going to tackle this a bit more head on. Instead of doing something on another day, I'm going to do something on Halloween itself. And instead of doing something about light or Moses and the burning bush or Joseph and his coat, I'm going to do Happy All Hallows. It took quite a few months for me to persuade the church that there was nothing inherently evil about pumpkins and orange and black. They were not entirely convinced. So, you know, my rule of thumb is I avoid witches and I avoid ghosts and zombies and anything scary. But I moved what I was doing into the church, decked the church out in orange and black, and we hit Halloween head on. I had a blow up dinghy in the churchyard. I had fairy lights around the place. I told the story of Jesus appearing on the boat at night, and the disciples thought he was a ghost, like a ghost story. And I made sure that I had loads and loads of sweets. I don't know about you, but when I'm doing mission, I believe in abundance. And I was really surprised. 200 people turned up. And what else surprised me is dads came. Dads finished work early to come. And in conversation with them, I realised quite how big Halloween is in our culture and for families. Now, I now live somewhere different. I live on a new estate. It's called North Stoneham Park. It's in between Eastleigh and Southampton. We moved here during lockdown as the community was being built. And we moved here to love the community and to people who love our neighbours and love Jesus too. And this is where my calling to mission comes in. You see, the reason we moved from a church I'd been at for 26 years and a house I'd been in for 16 and a job I'd been in for nearly 12 is my favourite word in mission is with. I don't believe, certainly it's not right for me to do things to or for people. So when we moved here, it was because I believe God was inviting us to join in with God, what God is doing in this community, that God was already here. I'm not bringing God to the people, and that God's already at work in people's lives in this community. And I'm trying to find out what he's doing and join in with it. You know, it's that John 1, isn't it? You know, Jesus pitched his tent. That's what that tabernacled, he dwelt among us with. So I'm trying to be among people and I'm trying to be with people. And the best way for me to do that is by being on the street with them. So we now run a supper trail. North Stoneham Park is 1,200 houses and there are 3 distinct parts to the estate. And so we try and make sure that on each part of the estate, there's hot dogs, there's something sweet. We do s'mores because toasting marshmallows over a barbecue, you can have great conversations while you wait for those marshmallows to melt, and hot chocolate. And our invitation is come and have supper amongst the sweets. We time it intentionally from 5 till 7 o'clock, but often we're out there longer. We generally get 500 to 600 people engaging with it across the estate, and I can easily have 250, 300 on my driveway alone. It has reduced antisocial behaviour in our area, and so because of that, when I apply for a grant every year to the local council to fund the food, they give it to me. So they'll often give me £500 towards food, and I love that because it means it's really inclusive, because I can say to people, you don't even have to buy your own food. I can bring you a table from church, I can bring your food. One family, not a Christian family, they joined in last year, single mum with her 2 children, and she said, we've realised that we love serving our neighbours. So God uses it in really unexpected ways. Just a couple of photographs so you get a sense. So this is my house kind of before the setup. So you can see I have pumpkins, but I have smiley faces. I use is it called a bevel? Something that makes holes in the top of pumpkins to then stick lollipops in it, because it makes them easy to grab. There's our fire pit. We quite often these days have a big gazebo as well, because it means if the rain comes down, we don't get soggy and the fire pit doesn't go out. Okay, here's what a driveway might look like. This is a couple of years. That was a hot dog driveway. The one on the right, you can see that was a hot chocolate stand. So we try and avoid anything scary. We don't have supper points that are all kind of decked out with ghosts and things like that. We've used some of Nay's literature sometimes as well as handouts to give away. So it's supper, it's sweets, and it's an opportunity to be with our community on the streets. And I've lost count of the number of people that will say, well, why do you do this? And I'll say, because we're here to love and bless and serve the community. And then people, you know, people connect with us often in other ways. If you want to reach your community, then you have to be prepared to invest in the long term. Relationships take time and to build trust. And so that's what we're trying to do here. Just as a final thing, we now run a community outreach cafe church once a month. And so what I do in the lead up to Halloween is we do one around All Hallows Eve, looking at the origins of it through a quiz. And so once the families are on the trail, they've got that historical underpinning as well. And the last question in my quiz is, having looked at the roots of Halloween and what it means, should you be scared when you leave tonight? And they say no, because they've realised that All Hallows Eve is actually a holy evening. And I love it, because then I can say, well, God bless you as you go. And they don't realise that I'm praying for them, but I am. So that's my journey through Halloween parties, to light trails, to treating, to trying to do alternatives, to hitting it head on with Happy All Hallows, and now a supper trail. That's what's right for my calling to mission in my context. You do what's right for yours.
Sammy, thank you so much for sharing with us with your experience and you know, all that's changed for you over the years. It's great to hear from you. And if you've got questions particularly for Sammy, then pop them up on the Slido that's in the chat for you to use. Specific questions for Sammy that she'll answer later on. So really warm welcome if you've joined us since we started. I'm Nay and I'm your host this evening. This event is run by Passion for Evangelism, and we're here to encourage, equip and inspire you in creative evangelism. So we've heard from Sammy, that's one specific example. We're going to hear next from Anna Price, all the way from Norfolk. So Anna, do you want to introduce yourself and then off you go?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm in Galston, which is, you'll have heard of Great Yarmouth. I'm on the far east coast of the UK, in a coastal town, so right by the sea, but a very, very deprived area. Our estate is about 10,000 people, and it's in the 10th decile of deprivation nationally, and one of what's considered 225 neighbourhoods that have been left behind in England. So that's my context. I'm married to the vicar, and for many years I volunteered full-time for the church, leading community work, but I'm now employed as well to do that, which is great. And yeah, I've like Sammy, I feel like I've got a long history with trying to work out what to do with Halloween, and yeah, I'm keen to share my story. I'm going to try and share it with some photos along the way. So let me see if I can screen share successfully and still see my notes, which is critical for me. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Lovely. Okie doke. So you can see a driveway in Peterborough, which is interesting. So when we were in so that's actually in Galston, that particular picture, but I was inspired finding my children were small. I was putting them to bed. I put a little happy pumpkin outside my front door because I thought I've got to do something. Put it outside the front door. Hadn't realised that that's like an invitation for people to come if you've got something outside your door. I was bathing my children on the 3rd floor of a townhouse, and the doorbell went, and I thought, well, I can't go down, they're in the bath. So I didn't. And when I did come down, there was an egg splattered on the door. And I thought, there has to be another way of engaging other than just shoving a pumpkin and hoping that the youths of the estate are going to get on well with that. Our church at the time in Peterborough had started something called Light on a Dark Night, and they got church members to open up their garages, a little bit similar to what Sammy's described. They'd open up their garages and their forecourts, and they used to offer hot chocolate. They'd give away glow sticks. They'd have music on, and the church kids would dress up in superhero costumes, and they would just invite people as they were passing on their trick-or-treat route to have a hot chocolate and a glow stick. And I thought that was, in a sense, genius. You know, they were engaging with the community who were all out on the streets with their families, and it meant that the church families could be out too and engaging positively. So that stuck with me. And then a few years later, I found myself up here with small children, wanting them to engage and thinking, having to go through those questions, you know, when we had a couple of years in Oxford and there were Halloween discos. Do my kids go to the disco or not go to the disco? But all the other kids were going to the Halloween disco. So I decided that they're going to have to go, because we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. And so my kids dressed up as very beautiful witches, because there was, you know, but a superhero costume at that stage really wasn't going to be acceptable for them. And I went to this disco, and I thought it was so lovely. All the families were together and the kids were having a lovely time. And I remember being struck that many people are not trying to celebrate evil. They're just trying to have a great community time together. I was very struck by that. Then we moved to Peterborough. We moved up to Norfolk, to a different house to where we are now, and the driveway you can see. We tried to kind of bring back this light on a dark night idea of the driveways, and so you can see that photo there, and I'm going to try and show you some more. I think we added things like apple bobbing and donuts, and we invited friends over, but we also invited the whole of the little estate where we were living at that stage. We put leaflets in the doors, and people just loved passing through. There's my little, you know, my little pretty witch. That was my compromise with what should they wear. And yeah, my girls' friends all were invited in for hot dogs, and they all wore whatever they wanted to wear. Yeah, fires we found helpful. Then we moved house and moved to a church where my husband was the vicar, is the vicar, and suddenly I had a whole building at my disposal. But still that desire to engage with people where they're already at. And they had tried light parties, that they had a few kids coming to a light party, but I knew that the rest of the community was out there, and I hated that kind of divide between the church and the wider community. So we thought long and hard about how to engage, and I kept the idea of light on a dark night stayed with me, that we can still be part of the darkness, and Jesus came into the darkness, and the light shines all the more brightly when you're in the dark, and he has overcome the darkness. We don't need to be frightened of the darkness. So we kind of developed this idea that actually we would create a space on our estate where kids would come in and want to be coming in because it was dark, because that's what they like about the whole event. They like the fact it's a bit scary and a bit spooky. So a little bit differently to Sammy in some ways, we've kind of gone for the scary spooky, and I still don't quite know where my line is about what's too scary and too spooky. There was one year when my son, who was 10, I think, dressed up as a werewolf, and I was horrified that he wanted to be a werewolf, but I couldn't stop him. He did it, and then he jumped out on a small child in our event and made the child cry. I think I've stepped over a line, but so I feel slightly on the edge all the time that we're doing it, but I'd rather be on the edge than in a position of safety. And I think when Jesus came into the world, he was quite on the edge. So we turned the church into a twilight maze. Initially we used pews, then as the pews got rid of, we used black sheets that were hung down, and the kids had to work their way through the twilight maze in order to get to the light. And then we've got another hall, so they would then go into the light zone, where there would be some of the things you can see there. There'll be crafts, so tea and coffee, hot dogs, all the fun stuff, all the light things would be in the light zone, but they had to get there through this dark maze on the way. And the only thing in the church that was light was this one candle the first year, and they had to get to the candle through the dark maze. These kids are in the light zone. And there's some of the neon, there's so many things out there you can get, neon paints and silly things. One year they had to, once they'd finished the maze, they had to stick a glow stick into this ball, and it looked really effective in a completely pitch black church. So that was their goal. They could see where they had to get to, and they had to get that glow stick into it. Yeah, some apple bobbing, and so many light crafts are out there, but we keep those in the light zone. So those are some little lighthouses that were made. Oh, there's my daughter growing up now, still as a pretty witch. So that's again the light zone, which has developed over time with different crafts. You can see a little glowing, don't know what it is, that little creature, but they like making those. Yeah, and then as the time's gone on, we've gained confidence, and I guess the dark bit is hundreds of people come through from the community that they love coming to it. It's part of their route. It's part of the ritual to go through St Mary Magdalene Church as part of their trick-or-treating route. And we've gained confidence, I think, both in our messaging, our Christian messaging, but also in being a bit more bold with the dark. So the dark, I used to say no skeletons, or no, we won't do this or we won't do that. And, the more other people get involved and get creative, it's not just spiders, but there's, I think we had some pretty horrible skeletons last year. And I think we had an axe that was, cutting someone's head off. And I thought, I think that, for me, my sensitivities, it was a bit too far, but someone else was fine. And I guess at the end of the day, I think, well, Jesus has overcome all of this darkness. And if we can demonstrate that he is supreme over all of that, then that's a great thing. So maybe it's not a disaster to have some of these quite foul things going on. And as you can see, the kids will turn up in the most grotesque things anyway sometimes. So we've got, now the maze at this point a few years ago was saying enter if you dare, with blood dripping down the down the sign. So we got bolder, but then we also got bolder with on their way to the light zone, they'd need to put a light onto the cross. There's my husband Matthew having a chat with them and explaining what it means to put something at the foot of the cross. There's more going on with the light zone. And I think this is the year when Nay's book appeared in my world, and I thought, at last I've got a resource. We used her spider one, and we'd got spiders on our promotional literature, and we had a resource that I felt comfortable to give away at Halloween, which was the first time. Thank you, Nay. Yeah, there's somebody, one of the granddads is reading her little book there. That year we tried to get them to write their name onto the cross as they kind of pass through into the light. Yeah, how am I doing for time? Because I'd like to tell you very briefly about this year's, which was a series of escape rooms. Am I okay, Nay?
2 minutes.
Yeah. So this year, I mean, everything's been developing every year, but this year we had 3 escape rooms made out of gazebos inside the church, and they had to guess the words "way, truth, and life." That volunteer is holding a tooth because it rhymes with truth, and they had various clues in each gazebo to work out. Yeah, that's way as in curds and whey, because it's the way, the way, the truth, and life. And they were given a kind of message when they first entered, and we've got smoke machines everywhere, and it's spooky as they entered. They were queuing up, lining up down the street to be able to get into this. And they said, we gave them a scary recorded message that said, Jesus says 3 things. and no one can enter eternal life without these three things. Can you find these three words or something like that? And they had to find way, truth, and life and pass it to some little angels. That's the kind of the atmosphere of the room. Somewhere there's some little angels who you pass the words to, which are little balls that you find at the end, and then they would give you a light that you stick onto the cross, and then you can go through to the light zone. So that it feels like it gets better and better every year, but the team gets bigger and bigger every year, and I don't know what we're going to do this year, but I feel braver each time. I wanted to share two little things. One was just the principle of Jesus coming into the darkness, and that we shouldn't be afraid of the darkness, that he has overcome it, and I think we can engage with it more than we think we can. And a little light in a very dark room lights up the room, but if you're not in a dark space, then there's no light. The light doesn't have much impact. And the other thing is just being in the world and not being afraid of the culture that we're in, and to keep looking for the good, and looking for the fact that, you know, lots of people are wanting to, well, the fact that people are even considering more and more dark forces, spiritual forces. This is something we can work with. Let's go with it. People care about community. We want to be part of that. There's a wonderful expression of what God is like. So let's be part of what the local community around us are doing in some form, rather than withdrawing. Yeah, and like Sammy, I've also had trouble bringing the church along with us at times, but generally, if we keep the vision going and the biblical principles going, people find their way with it. Thank you, Nay.
Anna, thank you so much. That was incredible. I think we'd all agree. It's just so inspirational, and I love the fact that you rather err on the side of danger than caution. But it's a journey, isn't it? And so if you've got questions for Anna, how did you get to that place? What's too far? Please put them in the slido. I've put the link in again. Ask Anna the questions, ask Sammy the questions. And a few people have mentioned resources. If you've got a good resource that you've used, please put that in the chat and we'll put them all into a list for later on. So Anna, thank you so much for your time and effort and all those incredible photos. You're an absolute inspiration to us. So we've heard about two quite large scale things, and maybe you're thinking it's too late, maybe my church aren't on board, or I can't get them on board, it's too much. We're going to hear about a slightly smaller scale project now, but it has a big impact still. And in some ways, this is where I'm at in our family, what we're up to. So I'm really delighted that Ruth is joining us. Ruth, I'm going to try and spotlight you so you can come.
Thank you, Nay.
In with me. Ruth, would you introduce yourself and then go for it? We're really delighted that you're with us and looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. And if you want, I can share those two photos.
It's all right. I've made a PowerPoint. I've been inspired by the other two, and I've made a PowerPoint. I found some more pictures.
Thanks, Ruth.
So yes, I'm Ruth. I live in North Cumbria, halfway between Carlisle and Penrith, in a very small village. So to give you an idea, there are 63 children in the school that is in our village. There's 103 houses. So that's the context that I'm in, rural and small. So we avoided Halloween, as has been the view so far. We avoided Halloween for quite a long time. My kids hated Halloween because in our village there is a family who go all out scary. So their house is terrifying. One year they had a hanging person from one of their windows, like noose around the neck, the whole thing. And they were actually told to take that down because it was too scary, because all the children have to walk past this house on the way to school. So we just avoided it. We would, if we possibly could, we would actually go away when Halloween was on. Kind of when it fell in half term, we would go away to family, and we would just not be here. And then 2020, Nay put on Instagram what she'd been doing with her amazing House of Light thing, and the penny dropped in a massive way in our house, and we just went, okay, we can do this. Like, we are on board with this. People are coming to our house. They want sweets. We are going to give them sweets, and we're going to give them something else too. And I went a little bit kind of, right, if we're doing our house as a house of light, it's going to be light. There's going to be light, a lot of it. So you can see in the pictures, there's fairy lights. We made a willow archway. So one year, the first year, we made a willow archway with lots of different arches. And then we realised that that was not sustainable because it's very windy and it's very wet. So we downgraded it the next couple of years to just one arch with lots of lights in it. And my husband and my daughter, who aren't the kind of people who would engage with people, they're not people necessarily, but they're very creative. And so you can see hopefully you can see the pumpkins that they carved. So we've got little squirrels. We had a woodland theme last year. So we had squirrels and hedgehogs and beauty and truth and life, because that's what we're about bringing into our community, is beauty and truth and life. In one of the year that we had many archways, we hid animals all through it. So as the children walked through the archway, we actually blocked off our drive so that they couldn't get down the driveway. They had to go through the archway. And as they came down, they could see all the little animals, some of them in the arches, some of them at the ground. And they come down and go, there's a bat. And it was like, yes, we know. Good, you found the bat. What else did you find? And then they'd run up and down the archway until they found everything. We told them what was there. And we go heavy on the sweets. There is no denial. So on the left, you can see the bowls of different sweets. So obviously this was the year we did the woodland theme. So we had mushrooms and leaves and corn and teddy bears, because bears live in woods, obviously, and cherries, because cherries grow on trees, and pumpkins, because it's Halloween, you have to have pumpkins. And we spent a merry Sunday afternoon making up 50 bags. And the bags were woodland themed, and we put a little tree sticker on it. And in it, we put, the first 2 years we did it, we put one of Nay's stories. And then last year I wrote my own and made a puzzle leaflet. And this year is the next one. So last year we had one called Into the Woods, and it was all about 2 children who got lost in the woods, and they were very scared, and they fell over tree roots, and they go home and their dad says, well, do you remember we talked about being rooted and what that means, and that God holds us securely. And this year the story is about a little boy who goes to his grandma's house, and he's too scared to go to sleep because of what he saw the night before when he was trick-or-treating. And it's just to say that you are more precious than many sparrows, that God cares for us, and God is there with us when we're worried. So this is what we do in our little village context. Now, the first year we did it, we made up 50 bags and we ran out by about 3. We had spare sweets, we just didn't have spare bags, so we still gave out sweets. The next year we did 60 and we ran out. Last year we did 70 and we ran out. Every child that goes to our village school comes, and more from the villages surrounding, who have started to hear that Corthwaite is the village to go to for trick-or-treating, because a lot of people go very heavy on the scary. But the beautiful thing last year was we had 2 families who, when they arrived, they knocked on the door and we went, and one of them was actually a little boy who hadn't started school yet, and they're not a Christian family. We know the Christian families in the village. It's a small village. There aren't many Christians, like there's 4 of us. So you know the Christian families, and well, there aren't any other families. It's just like 4 other Christians. There's no other families. And this one dad came and he said, I have been looking forward to this for the last month. And I looked at him and he kind of a little baffled, and he said, I love that there is somewhere I can bring my child, that he isn't scared. He wants to come out on this night. He wants to be with his friends, but he's so scared at the other houses, and he loves coming here. And that was just so precious, that actually somebody recognised there was something different. And then last year we played music as people came down, like as we'd sneak out the window, we could peek out the window, and as people started coming down, we'd play music. And we played like Lauren Daigle and things like that. And people came down, they were like, "Oh, I'm precious. I like that." And it's just a way of being really intentional, but quite simple. So I've been listening to Sammy and Anna going, "Oh, that's so amazing," but it totally wouldn't work in our context. I love it, and I kind of wish I was in a city or a big town. But here they come to us, and so we do what we can when they come to us, because we want them to know that they are loved and they are precious, even when what they want to do is scare. Because actually, a lot of our village are all out scare. That's what they want to do, but they just get a little bit of a surprise when they end up at our house. So that's what we do. Thank you very much.
Ruth, that is amazing. So good to hear from you and hear something quite different. I think that's important, isn't it, for all of us to realise that we don't need to be Anna or Sammy, but if we are, that's great. We can just be ourselves. And yeah, I've certainly got questions how someone like Sammy does that. Is it on your own? Is it with others? Ruth, yours seems much more doable, but at the same time, a few knockbacks, you know, it can be hard, can't it? So thank you, Ruth, so much for sharing. And please do, if your resource isn't already downloadable, then we could talk about that later and get a link for that for others to use.
It's not currently, but I would love for it to be.
We'll make that downloadable and available. And Ruth, it's just so lovely what you do, that it oozes beauty and goodness. And, you know, I think for me, as we do things on our driveway, people just say, "Nay, you can just see the lights from so far. People are drawn to your home." And I hope that in turn then, as people know us at the school gate or from wherever, they stop and chat and want to know more. So I'm sure that's the same for you. So thank you, Ruth, for saying yes and coming on. We are going to go to a time of Q&A now. So we've got a few questions already on the Slido. If you haven't worked out the Slido, that's fine. You could just put them in the chat. If you've looked at the Slido and you've seen that there's a question that you like, you can tick it, and it means that somebody else will get that asked for you. So I'm going to start with the first question that I've got here, and this is for Sammy. Sammy, do you have the resource story from the year you did Jesus appearing on the water? I really like that idea.
I'm sure I've got it in fact, I know I have. I know I've got it in a folder. If you want to email me, then you can email me and I will send it out, or I can email it to Naomi and you can send it out with all the resources if that would work better.
Yeah, send it to me.
Send
I'll
it
put
to
it on
you.
the blog post and everyone will get that afterwards. Great, thanks, Sammy. Whilst you're here, I'm going to ask you my question. Oh no, hang on, there's a question there for Anna. Ignore that, Anna, for now. Sammy, my question is, do you do all of this on your own? Or
no, because that word "with" is very important. So I do it with the community. So people who live on the estate host the supper trail. A couple of those people come to church, but a lot of them are neighbours that I've just kind of connected with along the way. And because we've done this now we started in 2019 before we moved here, and then we've done it 21, 2 and 3. There are now neighbours who kind of see it, get it and join in. So I'm just at the point this year where the visual you saw earlier, I'm sharing that with the Facebook group and kind of recruiting my people. But some of them are neighbours, some of them are church people, a couple of them are the local cub leaders. No, don't do it on my own, always with.
Yeah, I agree. And as a mum, half the battle is persuading my family that it's a good idea. And then once they've decided the night before it's a good idea, there's quite a lot of work to do. So if you can get others involved, that's absolutely the right thing to do. And another idea is that what we've done locally is individual houses like Ruth have done their thing on their driveway, and yet we've come together, we've prayed beforehand, we've made little trail maps so that people know where these houses are, and that's quite a nice way of being together but doing your own thing as well. Thank you, Sammy, that's great. I'll remove you for now. And Anna, the next question I think is going to come to you. So the question is in the chat: do you think it's really that appropriate to promote darkness and scary things in the church? That is a great question, and I think it's important that we all go slow here, because some of what we're saying is a bit radical, and all of us have different churches, streets, and previous experiences. But Anna, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, I completely relate to that dilemma, and I guess I still sometimes wonder whether it's appropriate or not. I guess it's to do with, in my view, I think we get, as long as the light zone is really great. What I wouldn't want is for our light zone, which is where all the crafts and activities and the hot dogs and the hot chocolate, if that was lame, and then you've got, if the real fun was in the dark bit and then the light zone was pants, then that would be awful. So I think it's getting that balance right, so that the church is shining light way above, so that when they get to the light zone, they are so relieved and happy to be there. That's the message that they're getting from the symbolism, I guess. So I think that would be my priority. And increasingly, we're getting more confident with how we're, using Bible verses, as I've explained, to get that message through, so they're going home with a very clear message from church. So they all learned a really great Bible verse. And I guess we've got a building that's got 2 large spaces, so that works quite well for us. But I guess if we had a churchyard instead, I'd want to make a lot of the churchyard, and then the light could all be inside the church, which would be neat, wouldn't it? But we haven't got a churchyard, but we've got 2 spaces, so we make the church shockingly dark, and that, I think it's a draw. And we get a lot of teenagers who come through and they love it. And I think if it was too tame, we wouldn't get the teenagers. But hundreds of teenagers learnt that Bible verse last year and had to really think about it. So I don't know, I can see I'm a bit on the edge and a little bit unusual in what I'm doing, and I think we've all got to find our own lines with it. And different members of our church have found there was an old lady one year who said she'd come and help, and I put her down to do a nice craft in the light zone, but I didn't think to tell her not to come through the main church. Well, to get to us, she had to go. She went through the main church. She found it absolutely horrifying and was quite shaken by the time she got to the light zone. I should have just said, just come around the back, and she would have been. But she's adjusted and she's understanding what we're trying to achieve. And I think if we made it too distant, if we didn't engage with the darkness, I just don't think the kids on our estate would engage with us. We've got such a long way to reach them.
Thanks, Anna. And I find Faith and Kids really helpful on this. They engage really thoughtfully and slowly on that topic. So again, that will be in the link. I think we sent that to you as pre-reading and listening. So it's a genuine question, and actually I found it's a great opportunity to talk to my own children who are Christians at a young age but still have really big questions about that. So I think it's a great opportunity to talk, but also it's a personal conscience, isn't it, about where you draw the line yourself.
The other little thing like that I found helpful was Glenn Scrivener did that poem. That came at a really good time for me. I found that very affirming. I don't know whether anyone can find that on a link, but he did a great spoken word that helped me think about darkness
That link is in my planning for Jesus, the scary ghost story.
Oh, excellent.
Great. And actually on that, so that's a great video to share on social media on Halloween itself. And thanks, Miranda. Knowing your audience is so important. I think what I love as well is we open up our driveway from like 4:30, 5 as soon as it starts going dark. My favourite bit is gone 8 o'clock when the teenagers come. And I just sit there in my camping chair and chat to them. And they come late, they do whatever the game is we've chosen that year, and they enjoy the sweets. And they are a different audience to the children that come with their parents. But again, when do teenagers just sit and want to chat with you on your driveway? It's just incredible. So Anna, thank you so much for answering that. I know that's a hard question to go for. Anna, I'll remove you. Who wants to answer this one? It's from Fire Tablet. I'm not quite sure who you are. It says, I know there is lots here focusing on children, but what about adults? Is there something you could suggest? Ruth, do you want to go first? You've not spoken yet.
Yeah, so we contemplated last year, but it was chucking it down, so we didn't do it. Having hot chocolate, and not for the children, very specifically saying there's coffee or hot chocolate for the adults, because certainly where we are, the kids do it, and all the adults, we actually live kind of in the turning circle of our cul-de-sac. So there's 32 houses, and we are the turning circle. So actually all the adults congregate in our turning circle and kind of can see their kids go off to the 3 different branches of our cul-de-sac. So we did talk last year about taking hot chocolate out to the adults while they're all standing waiting. As I say, it was chucking it down, so nobody was really standing around chatting last year, but it certainly is the plan for this year that we will go out to the adults. But also the leaflet that we give is very much a story to be read with your child. It's not a story that most of the children are going to read on their own. It's kind of framed as a bedtime story. So we would hope that the adults would read that. And this year we're putting, or I'm putting a QR code that links to a video, so that if they want to see something else, they can see something else. So it's not specifically the adults, it is more the parents, but it's as close as we're ever going to get in our context, for sure.
Thanks, Ruth. That's really helpful. Anna, Sammy, do you want to add anything? Yeah, go for it, Sammy.
I would just add the wider context. So one of the ways that I approach Halloween, All Hallows Eve, is by making the link with All Saints Day and All Souls Day and kind of looking at it as a whole season. That's certainly what the quiz that I use does. And I find the adults like that because it kind of demystifies things a little bit. But we also, in my community, have a community remembering tree. So as well as adults having opportunities to join in on All Hallows Eve, and just because there's so many of the community out, we do sometimes just get the adults. And I think because we've got the fire pit, they're quite happy to come and sit around it and chat. But we also give them an opportunity on the 2nd of November, on the 2nd of November, All Souls Day, to link it to who do you want to remember this year? Is there a relative, is there a friend, and they can tie a ribbon on the tree. So sometimes it's about just stepping back and looking at that whole season, and there might be things for the adults on the other days.
Thanks, Sammy. That's great. And whilst you're here, another question for you. I love the idea of the supper trail. Any thoughts on how to do this when church family are quite spread out?
Again, I've roped in my neighbours. It did take time. So the other hat that I wear is I chair the local community group. So we put on events in the summer and Christmas and Easter, and a community fridge and a community garden. So I use quite a lot of them. A lot of them are adults on their own, i.e. without children. Some of them are single. And so they really like it as an opportunity to join in. I love the fact that God says to Moses, what is in your hand? He doesn't want us to necessarily leap kind of 10 feet forward, but start with what he's already given us. So you might not have many church family, but you might have connections just in your neighborhood already through school or dog walking or whatever. And even if you can only start with 3, we started with 1. We started with 1 house, then we had 3, then we went to 6, then we went to 9. So, I think God is the God of small beginnings. So start with what's in your hand, and just because it's not 9 or 10, don't let it stop you if it's 1 house or 2 houses.
Thanks, Sammy. The first year that we were part of a Halloween trail, we were the only Christian family on that trail. I ended up trying to persuade my friends to run it, and they voted me to run it. So having never ever celebrated Halloween, we were running a trail for our neighborhood. So there were like 40 families that joined it, and we were the only house of light. So I think this is just an incredible opportunity to blend with people and be part of what other people are doing. Miranda, great question. She said, ooh, what games? So similar to Ruth, we choose a theme each year. We've done spiders, we've done funny pumpkins, no, I can't remember what we've done. We've done Harry Potter, sorry. And so, for example, on the spider one, we just embrace a theme. So I've got a little story about spiders that connect with Jesus. We did a giant spider web where people would climb through it. It was like a glow in the dark rope that we bought, and you had to climb through the web, and then you'd get the sweets and the story. The Harry Potter one, we did a really long guttering from our bedroom down to the driveway, and we did whatever the gold snitches are. We did wrapped up little ping pong balls in gold foil and sent them down, and kids had to catch them in the bucket. And then we had chocolate frogs that we made. And again, I printed out a little gravestone that's got a quote in Harry Potter that's just really relevant to the gospel. So we try and do one theme each year and just fully embrace it with games. Just think of something fun, one thing only, don't do too many, and then go for it. And people also just really enjoy it because there's lots of fun. And adults do stop and chat, or they stop you a few days later and say, thanks so much, Nay, I loved that story. It meant so much to me. So yeah, keep on doing that is a good idea. Okay, next question. Has anyone tried going and handing things out? We were thinking of doing bags of light. Ruth, Anna, Sammy, if not, we could open it up to someone that's with us today. Ruth, great.
So we noticed last year that there were some families, there's a Hindu family in the village. We know that they don't engage with the Halloween stuff, but we don't want them to get left out. So we go around and leave it at their door. We also had 2 new people who'd moved into our village last year, literally on Halloween. So we were like, they're not going to be going around because they don't know anyone yet, but we went and took those round. So we have done it on Halloween just to a few families who we know aren't going to be coming out, but we don't want them to miss out like our kids always have. Like our kids have always missed out on sweets. I mean, they don't because we buy them, but you know what I mean, they don't get them from everyone else. So we don't want the families who don't want to come out on Halloween to miss out on the goodness. But we actually do it at Easter instead. We do kind of reverse Halloween at Easter. So we save it up and we link it to Halloween at Easter, and we take out bags of sweets on Easter Sunday. So we don't do it on Halloween because we know that everybody's out in our village. We know the 3 houses that aren't, and we know everyone else is.
Thank you.
It was actually me that asked the question.
Thanks.
Go for it. I literally mean like going up to children in the street. So my son is almost 1. Last year we didn't bother with Halloween because we were sleep deprived and couldn't be bothered. But he's got this little red car that we push him around him to the shops. And I think a lot of people have seen him in it, and I get so many comments even from teenagers in the little Tesco's like, oh, that's such a cute little car. And my plan was to put him in a pumpkin outfit and have little, bags with maybe glow sticks or some literature, that sort of thing. And I just don't know how well received it would be going up to children that are already trick-or-treating and being like, would you like this? Or if their parents would be like, word, like that's a bit much. Like I just need to sound it out because other people I've spoken to are quite anti-Halloween. And that's, yeah. Anna, you go.
It sounds superb. Definitely. You're doing what you're doing. Your child has already known. This is perfect.
Okay.
And they will love. I mean, the thing is, the kids are going up to houses they don't know that look absolutely terrifying and asking for sweets. So I think if a little boy gave them out of his little red car, I think they would be delighted to take them that way. I think it sounds absolutely adorable. Perfect.
I'm totally with Anna. Like, do it. You are not going to find anyone on trick-or-treating night who says no to sweets. No. It just doesn't happen.
And you just don't know how it might take off. All these things for all of us have just built up year after year. I'm not suggesting he'll always go around with a little red car, but you may find ways of growing with it in some form, I would give it a go. It sounds absolutely lovely.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Thank you, Meg, so much. That's a great suggestion. And one thing we love to do in Passion for Evangelism is share ideas around Halloween so that we can inspire other women, men, churches for the following year. So Meg, if you do that, if you can take a photo, I would say the only thing is her, I'm not sure what you've got, tolerance for looking at scary kids dressed up. That would be the only thing. But
yeah, he doesn't even know what's he's has no concept of stranger danger, or he's very sociable. He's not even one. I think he'll enjoy going out before his what will probably be a later bedtime that evening.
That's great. Thank you, Meg. Okay, so have we got any more questions? Please put them in the chat or on the Slido. And if not, they might come in a minute. What we'd love to do is just hear a bit from you, the things that you've done. So if you would like to share your idea, either write it in the chat or just put your thumbs up and I'll see if I can see you and then add you onto my screen to come and talk. We really want to hear from each other. Tonight is about sharing good ideas. So is there anyone that would like to share an idea of what they've done? Okay, I've got Anna, I think. No, Naomi, great name. Okay, go for it, Naomi. You might have to unmute yourself if that's all right.
Oh, so can you hear me? Am I unmuted? So in lockdown, we've got a good community in our couple of streets. We live quite close to our kids' school, and we know lots of the families who live on the roads around us. So I just did I created on Canva a little, like a little trail with different letters, and the letters. So I got some of the friends who live around us to each display the letter in their window. And then the letters, the kids had to go and collect them, and I'd written a joke, and so with a little code with sort of Halloween-y pictures, I tried to go for cute ones rather than scary ones, and then the children had to correspond the letters to the clues, and it told a really cheesy joke, something about owls. I can't remember what it was, owls and Twitter. I can't remember the joke, but the only thing that we did wrong is that it was dark, so people couldn't see the things in the window. So if we were going to do it again, just if anyone's thinking of doing it, you need your light on inside the house to light it up. But people seem to enjoy it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Naomi. And actually the silhouette windows are quite good for that, aren't they? Yeah. And you can buy stuff on the internet if you're no good at art. So Naomi, again, please send me some photos. We'd love to share that story. It's simple, but it's great, isn't it? So anyone else, put your thumbs up if you would like to just share an idea. And if I don't see you, just unmute. Sammy wants to know what Amy is preparing. What are you up to, Amy?
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Hello. I'm just going to make Ruth laugh. This is so I'm a serial hobbyist. I collect. I mean, anyone who likes to be creative likes to. We all know that half the hobby is buying the kit and the other half is learning the craft. So I'm in recovery, and I had decided I wanted to try lino printing. I didn't want to buy all the kit. So in my local scrap store, I found polystyrene sheet, but it's covered both sides with paper. And so I'm stripping the paper off so that we can use the polystyrene sheet inside to do, you carve with a pencil, and then you use an ink pad to use it like a printing stamp. And I'm preparing it partly for my daughter's birthday and partly for a Christian creative cafe that we have in one of our local towns that I go to. So completely unrelated, but mummy multitasking.
You can do something for Halloween, then let us know. Advertise it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lovely craft. Sorry, it was completely unrelated.
That's great. It's good to hear. Thanks, Amy. Okay, I'm not sure I can see everyone's screen, so if you would like to share, maybe just unmute yourself. Oh, Liz D. Liz, do you want to unmute yourself? You'd rather put it in the chat. For some reason, I'm not so good at Zoom anymore.
Sorry, I was just being a bit shy. We live in a sort of oversized village / small town, pretty traditional, pretty middle class. But the church that we joined 4 years ago, my husband's the vicar there. basically had no children, so we brought the only ones. And it was during COVID, so a lot of our sort of initial outreach things were all based in our churchyard. We've got a lovely churchyard, which is helpful, and we've not got a great big building for people to meet in. So we just filled it with light. We used those solar lights to begin with, which were absolutely dreadful. I wouldn't recommend them at all. It's far better to have lots of dangerous electrical cables and natural bright lights, which we've done in recent years. But lights all over the churchyard, lots of little lanterns and things. And then in the sort of clearing near the woods at the back, we had a series of sort of silly games like, catch the rat and bucket ball and things like that. And then some sort of light crafts at different tables that kids could do. And we've recently expanded to glow in the dark tattoos and face painting and various other things. And we have dirt cheap hot dogs and cups of juice and stuff. And then one of the ladies in our congregation is a fire performer, which I just think is the most incredible thing as a totally uncreative person. And she comes and does, oh, hello. She comes and does some like a big fire dance thing, which everybody kind of gears up to as like the pinnacle. And my husband will do like a 2-minute light in the darkness, come to church, it's always open, etc. And then we give out goodie bags to everybody at the end, I think usually with something from Nay in there, say a little bag of sweets and something to colour in and things. And that has grown. So I work in a totally different job. We've got quite an elderly congregation, but people have really got behind it. So it doesn't happen on Halloween itself, but we have basically sold out every year. So we didn't charge the first couple of years, but we ticketed. So we basically limit it to 100 kids plus adults. There's no unaccompanied children, because I couldn't cope with that. But yeah, and we started charging a couple of pounds last year, I think, just because we were getting a few people who didn't turn up, and we just thought it was a bit of a disincentive, and it meant that we weren't spending quite so much of sort of church budget people were willing to pay. That's really blessed. I can't say that we've suddenly got millions of people coming to church off the back of it, but we've been building relationships over the past 4 years with our church school that we advertise it all through. And we have got families who first made contact with us through that, who now sometimes turn up on a Sunday. Whether or not they're related, I don't know, but it's been finally captured the congregation. Somebody else took it over from me last year. So I just help with little bits now, but don't have to be in charge, which is amazing.
That's so inspirational. I do remember a photo of a fire performer. I'm sure you sent me. That brings back a memory. Again, we'd love to write up your story even better, because I mean that's just amazing. I've not heard of anyone ticketing an event for it or having fire dancers. It's great. So thank you, Liz, for being brave and sharing there. Anybody else like to share? Please unmute if I don't see your thumbs up. Oh, Kelly Sargent, welcome, Kelly.
Hi. We've been doing something a bit similar to is it Naomi's thing with a kind of trail round our village. We do it jointly with our local, we're Church of England. We do it jointly with our the local free church in our village. Our village is about 5,000 people. So us doing something jointly together is quite a bit of a statement anyway, because it's the two churches doing that jointly. So we've started doing this trail. Again, there are clues and you can kind of follow it with a illuminated picture in a window. And then at one of the churches, usually the free church, because they are in the centre of where all the kind of neighbourhood is, where everybody goes trick-or-treating. There are activities in the church, all themed around light and hot chocolate and things. And one thing that we've done in the past to encourage people to actually drop into the church, as well as collecting their clues and things, is on their way round, when they reach one of the stations where there's a clue, is to have a little voucher that just says, present this in the church for a free hot chocolate. And that just, particularly because the weather tends to be absolutely awful. And so the adults are actually often really grateful they can bring their voucher for the free hot chocolate. They go in there and find that it's warm and dry, and there are activities that the kids can do as a little bit of a breather from trudging around in the absolutely freezing cold, howling gale that they've been forced by their kids to wander around through. So, so yeah, that's just something that we found, it works quite well.
Amazing. Thank you, Kelly, so much. So it's really exciting, isn't it, that there's trails, there's churchy type events, there's driveways, even this bag with a 1-year-old in his car. I love that. Kate, do you want to share? Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, nothing much really more than what I've just written there. We put a pumpkin out that the kids do, and then they dress up, and we have 3 different boxes with different age kind of specific. I'll send Nay what the ones are that we choose, and they're kind of aimed at teenagers and juniors and then little ones. And we have particularly loads of the little ones because it's easier to give out the little ones to older kids, rather than if we get left with loads of the teenage ones, then we haven't got anything to give the little ones. And they're just from Good Book Company, and then we staple loads of, like a couple of bags at least, of Haribo onto each one, and then we give it out and we say we're Christians, and we yeah, so that's what we do. And we every year we've increased how many we get. So last year we got 70 and they were gone within an hour. So, and then when we've run out of flyers, we take the pumpkin, well, we turn the light off in the pumpkin as a kind of like, we have nothing more to give. So yeah.
Thank you, Kate. That's really encouraging to hear. Last few minutes, Bonnie, do you want to just come and share? It's nice to see your face.
Yeah, can you hear me? However, you can't see my face because my video is not working. I don't know why. My Zoom chat is telling me that I don't have a camera, which is weird because I do. So apologies, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Yeah, really low key compared to most of you. I live in a village that only maybe a couple of people from our church live in, but not many. So on an individual basis, we just found, as lots of you, for my daughter's 10 now, and for the majority of her life I just hid in the house and turned the lights off, and just didn't really know what to do. A few times we gave out tracts of some sweets, but found that we gave them out really quickly and we didn't really have conversations, and it was just a bit of a, what am I doing? There's more to this, more we can do here. So we decided to start like making some homemade bark, which is really easy if anyone's never done it, and put it in, made it look really pretty, and put it in a little nice gift bag with some glow sticks, so it really didn't cost that much to make. And we just go around a bit like the little red car, but not quite as fancy when you're 10 years old, like dressed my daughter up in loads of glow sticks. Well, we all did as a family, as in loads of glow sticks, and then walk around the village just giving them to people or leaving them on doorsteps. And it was just a really good conversation starter with people like, oh, like, why are you giving stuff rather than your daughter kind of knocking on doors and taking stuff? And it was just a really good way to meet people. Like lots of you said, like, so many people are out, and like, when else are people out and about walking around the community, really? And like, even in like the village that we live in, like, you basically see people when people are mowing their lawn, or when you see people leave in the morning or come back, but that's it. So what an opportunity to go and actually chat to people who you might not normally chat to, especially people without kids maybe as well, or just people you might not see at school. So yeah, it's just a good opportunity to get out and about and go out to people rather than wait for people to knock on your door. But yeah, I've loved all these ideas. Thank you.
Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing. That's really, really encouraging. And as we've said all along, this is a night for each of us, whatever your context, whatever your experience, whatever your support with Christians in your area. So we hope that it's been a helpful event for you. We will collect all of those resources, and if you've got any more, put them in the chat and I'll add them to a blog that we'll share with you. We'll also be sharing the recording, first of all, with anyone that signed up, and then it will go out on our YouTube channel later on next week. But Passion for Evangelism is here to inspire, equip and encourage you. We've got more events coming up this term. You heard Kate earlier, she's going to be sharing in our wreath making event that speaks of Jesus, and also you heard Kelly, she's going to be speaking at that event too. We've also got a spoken word poetry mentoring scheme, and finally a day called Finding Her Voice, looking at equipping women to write and deliver evangelistic talks at Christmas time. So there's lots going on this term. We'd love you to follow us on social media. There's also a newsletter that I think you could tick to sign up to, and all the information will come through there. But for now, thanks so much for joining us. please, when you do whatever you do at Halloween, tag us in, and we'd love to share it on our social media so that 2025 more people can be inspired to be a light in the darkness at Halloween. But thanks so much for joining us, and hope you have a good evening. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.